If you find yourself sabotaging your progress as you are working towards your goals, congratulations. This is amazing. And we're going to talk about why in today's episode. Thing that we don't realize about self-sabotage, there's so much misinformation about what self-sabotage actually is, right? Why are we sabotaging our progress? Why are we doing the opposite of what we say that we want? And when this happens, it can be incredibly frustrating. We can feel a lot of shame and guilt. We can be really disappointed in ourselves. And that's natural. But self sabotage is not to protect you or, whatever the conventional advice is out there about self sabotage. It's also not useless. It's incredibly useful information, just like our emotions, just like our feelings, just like our thoughts. When we can look at this as data, when we can look at this as information, then we reclaim the power over that behavior or over that thought or over that emotion, because we're saying, okay, I'm noticing this, I'm confronting this. Now, what am I going to do with this? What is the action I'm going to take? And it's the same with self sabotage. Self sabotage is not there to ruin your life, it's a very, very natural expression of self preservation. It is how you're trying to conserve your energy. Now, the way that our energy works, right, is that when we are fired up, excited about something, we have a strong emotional attachment to it, we're off to the races. And as that can kind of wane, right, we can't keep that up 24/7, 100% of the time. So our subconscious kicks in. After the willpower, when we start to lose energy, our subconscious kicks in to help us keep going. And that is the part of us that is ingrained in us. That's our standard of living, our rules for life, our core beliefs, right? Or our limiting beliefs. But that is what takes over after the initial kind of excitement wears off. And our subconscious is made up of all of our default behavior, all of the things we just do without thinking, right? If you drive and you get behind the wheel and you have a specific route that you go to every day, you can just do that route without really realizing that you're going that way. Your arms are naturally going to do what you got to do in the car. If you're making breakfast and you make the same smoothie every day, you could sleepwalk and make that smoothie because your subconscious is so primed to it, so aware of it. So our subconscious is where all of our default behavior lives. Our conscious is where all of our new behavior lives. What happens with self-sabotage is that our conscious mind says, okay, we're doing these new things, but it's not built into our subconscious yet. It's not part of our programming. And so while we have the energy and the motivation and the excitement, we do the things. And when we naturally lose that, we default back to our old behaviors. Now, what do we do about this? Because we ultimately want to keep going towards our goals. And like I said, congratulations if you realize that you're doing this. Because actually, what you're realizing is that you set your goals backwards. I said that correctly. You started with the end result instead of starting at the root, right? So we want to look at the end result, but we want to allow the end result to help us change the root, right? The subconscious. And that is going to help us keep going even when we lose that natural excitement and motivation because we're driven by something else. It's a natural inclination. Who I am, my identity, how I see myself, right? All those subconscious scripts and programming that I have about my identity is leading to my actions. That's the do part. And my actions are leading to the results and the outcomes that I want. That's the have part. So if I want to have a really strong body, the be do have model would say, I am a really athletic person. I do the things that really athletic people do. I run, I work out, I'm really active. And so I have a really fit body in the end. Now, when we are starting to set goals, though, the majority of the time we start with what we want to have, right? We look at what we want to have, and then we go one step back and think, okay, well, what do I need to do to have this? And then we stop there. And that is stopping at the level of the conscious mind. That is stopping at the level of the awareness. Like I said, that is the outermost part of the sphere. What we really want to do if we don't want to self sabotage is go all the way back to the middle, to the root, to the B. We want to start with, who do I want to become? I want to become the kind of person that does this and the type of person that has this. I don't want to just have and do this and remain the type of person that doesn't have or do those things naturally. If you think about acting, When you're acting, you're putting on a character. You're not actually changing, who you see yourself as or at your core, but you're practicing, you're modeling your behavior after these other people. And all of us can do that to some degree. If I say, make your breakfast like the Queen of England, just pretend, imagine how the Queen of England would make her breakfast. You're going to make your breakfast differently than how you would yesterday or the day before or how you've always been doing it, right? Because you're putting on the character, you're stepping into the B part, you're stepping into the role of the person that does and have those things. You don't need to go out and research how she makes her breakfast. She probably doesn't. She probably has people that make her breakfast for her. But you get the point, right? You're naturally going to step into that. When we are self-sabotaging, it's because we never went back to the root, to the who do I want to be? Who is the person that I'm ultimately trying to become, who does these things and who has these things? When we start at the self-perception part, sometimes you hear it as self-concept, sometimes you hear it as self-image, there's no self-sabotage because we're resetting the subconscious programming, we're resetting the default so that we're naturally just going to behave in a certain way and we're just going to have the things that we imagine this person has, right? And it's going to look different for all of us. So, how do we change our self perception, right? This is who I've been my whole life, Jiselle. How am I going to be any different? I get it. All of us, regardless of how your past, whether it's been mundane and status quo, or if you transformed from being really different, the person you are today is different than who you were 10 years ago and 10 years before that. Because evolution and our identity evolution is a natural part of life. It's going to happen whether we like it or not. What we're talking about when we're setting goals is a conscious decision to change that identity, right? Not just allowing it to morph into whatever, life creates for us when we just go along with things. It's about actually deciding who we want to be and deciding that new identity. So we have experience with this. Maybe you decided that you want to go to university and you want to be the first person in your family to go to university. That's an identity shift that you took on. Maybe you decided that you wanted to have a certain kind of job that no one in your family has ever had. That's an identity shift that you've taken on, right? And you were so focused on becoming that way that you started to do the things to lead you there, to have those things. When I decided I was done being a drug addict, that was an identity shift. I had to replace those behaviors with something else. I had to see myself as different. So I have a little bit of experience with transforming our self-perception. Now, one coach that I really admire, her name is Tanya Lee. She's the creator of the School of Self-Image. She helps women change their self-image and transform their self-image. And her framework is very similar. I learned this framework from her, but I've adapted it to the Mighty Emotions way, of course. But it really encompasses three pillars. It's about mindset, surroundings, and style. So when she talks about style, she's talking about outward expression and how you carry yourself. And that's really important. For me, it's about how you show up, right? Your style is how you show up. Your surroundings is what are you consuming? What are you letting into your life? What environments are you putting yourself in, and how is your environment on a day-to-day basis? Your friends, who are you surrounded with? Your family, who's surrounding you, right? Your coworkers. So there's how are you showing up? What are you surrounded with? And then your mindset, right? How are you seeing the world? How are you understanding the world? And these three things, when we focus on shifting these three things, we shift our self image. And when we shift our self image, right, when we decide I want to be this person, we start to do things differently and we start to have different things. Now, again, it sounds so simple when I say it, it's not that straightforward. How do we actually go about changing those things? So, in my experience, what has led me to be the most successful is to start by making the decision. A lot of times we have a fear of change, which is really the fear of making a decision. All fear is a sign that you haven't made a decision. What are you avoiding doing? Decision are you avoiding making? What are you avoiding choosing? Right? You're so focused on what you don't want to happen that you're choosing to not do something, right? Despite what's important to you, despite what you really want. So when you're faced with fear, you're faced with a decision to make. Am I going to do X or am I going to do Y? What's more important to me? And so you have to ask yourself, this fear of change, this fear of things being different, that natural inclination, right? That it could be worse, that it could be like this, that it could be like it was before. What am I going to decide? Do I want to change? And if the answer is yes, on a deep level, then you can change because you can have anything that you want, but you have to make the decision. Now, a lot of times we don't make the decision because we don't know the next step. So here's the next step: find mentors and role models. All of us from the time we're born are surrounded by role models. And as we get older, we find mentors. And there's a difference between mentor and role model. A mentor is somebody who expands your way of thinking and seeing the world, the mindset piece, right? It's very important to have mentors that share new philosophies with you and help you to work through how you're seeing things to shift your mindset. Those are mentors. Role models are people we want to emulate, people we want to model our behavior after. So people who are doing the things we want to do, people who have the things that we want to have, and we want to model, fashion our behavior somewhat after them. Why is it really important to have mentors and role models when we decide we want to change? Because in becoming somebody new, your mind doesn't have anything to work with. I mean, it might have certain scraps and pieces and Easter eggs from your life, but you need new ideas, you need new information, you need someone to show you a different way of being because you only know how you've been being. When I decided to get clean, I started going to recovery meetings and surrounding myself with people who had been clean and who were in recovery and who were thriving, who had once been where I was and who are now where I wanted to be. And I got a mentor and someone to help me work through the process. And I started modeling my behavior after these people. Oh, they go to meetings, they do this, they do that. So I started doing those things. And guess what? Here I am sitting before you almost a decade clean. Amazing, right? Because I found mentors and I found role models after I decided that I wanted to change. And I learned from them and I listened to them and I really tried to see things the way that they were explaining things to me. I tried to see things in a new way and I modeled my behavior differently. I needed someone to teach me. When we're children, we observe the people around us to learn how to speak, to learn how to walk, to learn how to behave and conduct ourselves. And every child that grows up in a different environment grows up different, behaves differently, sees themselves differently, right? So when we can model ourselves after the people that we want to be like and emulate their behavior and have the mentors, and sometimes they're the same people, but a lot of times they're not, right? Sometimes I don't want the life of my mentor, but I want to see the world that they see the world. Then once we do that, we want to method act. That is the part where we're modeling our behavior and fashioning our behavior after our role models. We want to put on that character. We want to imagine how would that character stand? How would that character speak? How would that character walk? How would that character eat? All of it. We want to just method act it. We want to make it real. We want to feel it in our bodies. And that is our rehearsal, our practice. I was a drama kid and I loved it. I loved improv, I loved drama, putting on different characters. I had a horrible life at home and it allowed me to escape that for a minute, not be myself, to be a different character, right? And I just always felt different. If you're an actor, sometimes if you get really into it, you kind of like lose yourself in it a little bit. You have to like, oh wait, that's not really your life. You don't really have those things, right? You get really excited, or if you're watching a movie and you get really invested in a character, right? And your emotional attachment to them starts to take over. It's like, whoa, 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 let me recalibrate here. We do this naturally. We know how to mirror other people. We know how to adapt our behavior naturally. So it's not about, let me change myself overnight. It's about, let me find people who are doing what I want to do. Let me learn from people who see things differently than me. Let me practice. Let me rehearse. Let me start behaving in these new ways. Let me imagine how I would act in a certain situation. And let me practice. And it's a daily practice of stepping into that role, not just doing those actions, but stepping into the role of the person who naturally does those things, letting it become a new normal. And in doing this, you're really training your subconscious. Your subconscious starts to believe it, starts to think it's real, and then it becomes real, right? It becomes the new normal because you start to tell yourself, this is what we're accepting now. This is the standard that we're accepting. This is the behavior that we're accepting now. We're not accepting the other behavior. And you don't need to try to fix yourself or force yourself to stop doing those old default behaviors because you're being a different character. You hear this a lot with future self journaling, and you hear this a lot with, manifestation, become your future self, step into your future self. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and know what that self is like. Your mind is programmed Our minds are programmed. So you know who you've been up until now, and you can imagine who you want to be, but you're going to craft that after people who are have certain characteristics and elements of their life that you want to have. So you need to just make the decision, face the fear, confront the fear, decide what's important to you. Go out, find the mentors that can teach you to look at things differently, change who you're surrounded by, get new role models, and it doesn't have to be in person, right? We have this amazing digital world now where you could have a peek into someone's lives just by being online. If there's a person that you see them and you just admire them so much, go out there and find interviews of them if they're a celebrity or if they're a public figure. Observe how they walk, how they stand, how they talk. Practice those behaviors if those are behaviors that you would like to have. And it doesn't need to feel weird. It might feel uncomfortable. It might feel foreign. But remind yourself that you're not doing this from a place of something's broken with me and I'm wrong. You're doing from this place of I'm learning how I want to be. I'm deliberately and intentionally choosing my identity because we all get that option. Your identity is not fixed, it is fluid. It is not who you are, it is who you're being right now. Because who you're going to be tomorrow could be different. Who you're going to be in 10 years is going to be different, whether it's intentional or not. So understand that you're not trapped with who you've been and you're not trapped with these behaviors, but you need to have something pulling you forward. And coming from a place of self love, being able to confront the emotions that come up along the way, that is going to propel you into the future that you ultimately want. And that's going to bring you the most satisfaction in life. And it's not going to keep resulting in this self sabotage because that old behavior is no longer going to feel like who you are. It's not going to feel like a part of you. So you're not going to gravitate toward that. You're going to gravitate toward new behaviors by default. When that energy wanes, when you're not having the best day, when you didn't get enough sleep, when you're feeling a little off, all the subconscious programming is different. And it's not, I'm going to become that role model. I'm just going to take the things I admire and I aspire to have and to do, and I'm going to practice that. And I'm going to see myself as that person. Be, do, have. So I hope this helps you be a little less weary of self-sabotage. Look at it as data, look at it as information, use it when it shows up, work with it instead of against it and say, okay, where do I need to make a decision about what I want? Where can I go find mentors and role models? How can I start practicing being like this person or being this new way? And your life is going to change, my friend. With that, I love you so much for listening. If this podcast was helpful for you, please let me know by either liking, leaving a comment, reaching out to me in Instagram DMs. You can also join my podcast community as well, where you can stay up to date with exclusive offers that I just have for you guys and other, information announcements that I'll release there before I release it publicly. I'm so grateful that you're here. I really hope that this is supporting you into finding your power and being kinder to yourself. See you in the next episode.